When you were a kid, how much did you spend on Pokemon boosters? Or hope that you'll get your favorite toy that you wanted from your Happy Meal? Well, congratulations, you were gambling. Stick with me here, but as adults, we've gotten to a point where you're gambling every single day. It's all without you even knowing it. In fact, companies are spending billions to further turn consumption into the world's most hidden casino. And they've already successfully expanded their targets. 1 in 2 American men aged 18 to 49 already have a gambling account, but now it's increasingly reaching women with creepy toys, blind boxes, and retail therapy. So how exactly did we get from childhood toys to now everything we buy feeling like a gamble? Well, after weeks of research, I found that this goes way beyond this secret form of the gambling epidemic, to a point where the US is increasingly becoming an economy that runs on it. Because when life gets unaffordable, addiction usually becomes the only escape. But if something isn't done about this soon, it's slowly becoming an addiction without a cure.
How much did you spend on Labubus last month?
Probably like $700.
You're choosing $700 in Labubus over your marriage.
Blind boxes for many of the consumers is an experience. And so you've been investing that anticipation and you want that big payoff. So in that sense, it resembles very strongly gambling.
So to understand how gambling has infiltrated almost every aspect of American life, we need to go back in history. Because what you're about to see is that this only became possible under the right economic conditions. And to get there, an entire generation, including many of you watching, were the very guinea pigs that made everything that we see today happen. So with that, let's start in the 1950s. Because back then, buying American products wasn't just shopping. It was like a patriotic duty. So much so that American leaders were literally branding mass consumption as freedom, unlike the Soviet Union's state-controlled communistic economy. And it worked. By the 1960s, middle-class Americans enjoyed a living standard never before seen in history, and consumption became a way to prove capitalism's superiority. But then zooming forward, the cracks started showing. The 1970s brought foreign competition. In the 1980s, we saw auto workers smashing Toyotas with sledgehammers, furious that Japanese imports were taking American jobs. And by the 90s, when the Cold War ended, so did the us versus them narrative that slowly started fading away. And as globalization and outsourcing took over, the Buy American campaigns also started fading in the mainstream. But look, here's where it gets interesting. Because as patriotic consumption died, something else was being born. Companies like Walmart began branding themselves as price-conscious retailers as they started noticing that consumers were increasingly becoming price and novelty driven.
And you'll always find low prices. That's our promise and our commitment to you.
But the problem was, competing on low prices usually makes it a lot harder to build loyalty. And so companies needed a new way to create addiction. And you and I became the perfect guinea pigs. While this economic shift was happening, companies began quietly experimenting on kids by turning shopping into more of a game of chance. So remember Happy Meal toys, Pokemon card packs, claw machines at the arcade? The collect them all appeal drove repeated purchases in pursuit of rare items, but more importantly, in pursuit of unpredictable rewards. And this is key here because what unpredictability taps into is a powerful conditioning that psychologists call the intermittent reinforcement. In short, it triggers a bunch of dopamine into your brain. And as you can imagine, it's the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive.
Yes! Nice!
A 2023 study found that over 90% of young adults recalled playing claw machines as children, and those who did so more frequently were significantly more likely to gamble as adults. And the same playbook is being repeated with today's kids, but at scale. For us, it might have been claw machines, but today's kids are on Roblox, which is free to play, but it hooks kids through in-game purchases and random rewards. So I'll get into all of this, but as consumption evolved, companies started figuring out that the best way to create lifelong customers is to condition us early on as kids to crave surprises and random rewards. And as I'll reveal by the end of the video, the uncertainty surrounding today's economy almost guarantees that this is about to get a whole lot worse. And as you know with gambling, the house always wins. But when it comes to creating online, you don't want to leave that up to chance. That's why I use my sponsor, Opus Clip. And they've grown way beyond clipping. Now it's one of the most powerful AI growth tools for creators, and with automated workflows, my long videos get pulled in, auto-edited into clips, and soon even scheduled to post while offline. The new editor is faster than ever with fresh caption styles, and their upgraded Reframe Anything is basically autopilot for framing. It locks onto your subject perfectly, but you can still take control whenever you want. Apart from my channel, Opus has also powered creators like Jubilee, Mark Rober, and Tom Segura, with clips hitting tens of millions of views. It's not just editing, it's growth. So don't gamble on your content strategy. Try Opus Clip with the link below for 1 week free plus 3 months at 50% off and see how much faster you can grow. Because just how companies perfected this formula on kids, companies have now figured out how to get into a previously untapped market. Because we all know that traditional gambling already has a grip over men through sports betting and poker, but women have historically avoided these spaces. So their master plan was this. Instead of calling it gambling as we know it, the goal was to make it cute, social, and about treating yourself. And I have to give it to them because it's absolutely genius and it's working like crazy. And a perfect example of this are blind boxes. Walk into any trendy toy store today and you'll see this. Collectible toys packaged like mystery prizes where you don't know what's inside until you open it. And the poster child for this trend, this little guy here. If you're 90% of my audience, you probably have absolutely no idea what this is, but this is a Labubu. And these goblin-faced, to be honest, I don't know what it is made from a Chinese toy maker called Pop Mart, and it's achieving cult status.
I wanted Labubu's.
What is a boo-boo?
A Labubu.
Labubu?
Labubu.
Celebrities from Rihanna to K-pop bands have all been spotted carrying Labubus. Limited edition drops sell out within hours, and people wait hours in line just to buy one of these things.
The universe is about to give you a gift. I'm dead wrong.
In fact, demand is so high that there's an entire resale market. Rare Labubus fetch 3 times more than their original price, $80 or more for a fucking figurine that retails around $30 to $45. But the reason why it's gotten this way is because these blind boxes exploit the very same psychological triggers as slot machines, but it's cute. They play on curiosity and anticipation, collection and completion impulses, and FOMO from the limited availability that they release. And all this taps into the variable ratio reward system, where every purchase is the chance of hitting the jackpot, or in practice, pulling a secret rare Labubu that completes your collection. And the fact that it's in a blind box where you don't know which toy you're gonna get when you buy one, it's the very point. It's the gambling thrill that gets you hooked, like one of the 75% of Pop Mart's customers that are young women. So if you really think about it, blind boxes are essentially just slot machines on steroids, but for women, and they're making billions of dollars on this behind the fact that it's so cute. Sorry. But anyways, blind boxes are just the beginning of what I call softcore gambling. And it's not just infiltrating young women. There's even examples like social casinos that literally simulate slot machines, poker, and other casino games, except no real money is won. And you start playing with virtual coins in which you can buy more coins using real cash. And these social casino apps like Slot Mania are made up of 72% women, mainly aged around 35 to 55. But the most concerning soft gambling example is in gamified shopping that is designed to make spending money feel less like shopping and more like gaming. You probably heard of Shein and Temu by now, but what you may not know is that their user base is 63 to 66% women versus Amazon, which primarily skews male. And if you've ever been on it, you can probably guess why this is the case. As soon as you go on, you get blasted with slot machines and spin the wheel pop-ups for mystery coupons and flash sales and timers telling you that you have to buy now. And by creating these artificial urgencies, these apps nudge users to buy now, think later, where the deal itself becomes a jackpot if you're able to snag it in time. And through all these examples, what the question now becomes is what explains this massive gender divide between softcore and hardcore gambling? Simply put, it's psychology. Research shows that the further you move away from money on the table towards surprise for its own sake, the more female the audience becomes. In simple terms, women respond more to low-risk, steady rewards focused on collection, completion, and community rather than pure competition. Think about it this way. A girl buying a Labubu finds happiness in finally getting the pink bunny or whatever the hell it is that completes their zodiac set. Whereas men are more likely to gamble for the competitive and financial reasons, like Logan Paul making an entire video flexing how he finally got this ultra rare Pokemon card that costs millions. So just to drive the point home, men prefer more of these high stakes environments, like the fact that 96% of the players in the 2025 World Series of Poker were men versus only 4% women. And as you can imagine with these gender differences, so is the differences in the business model of these companies. Traditional hardcore gambling relies on a small percentage of whales or high rollers that spend huge amounts of money.
The most you lost in a night?
Around 300,000.
But soft gambling is the direct opposite. Instead of needing each user to spend a lot, they need millions of users to spend a little. And so the goal becomes fundamentally different, where it's more about making every customer a consistent spender by keeping them within the ecosystem. And they're doing that successfully. Nearly half of Pop Mart's purchases are from returning customers, and there's a whole ass community. Fans attend Pop Mart conventions, share collections on social media, and anticipate new releases just like a sneakerhead would wait for the new Jordans. And it's how just in a couple of years, they've skyrocketed to a multi-billion-dollar valuation by selling what are essentially cheap 5-cent toys for $45. By turning retail into a reoccurring service with built-in reasons to come back, they've turned millions of women into consistent gamblers without them realizing it. And the genius play behind it is that they're creating an illusion of winning for the customer, making spending feel like playing, and it's all built on a system where the house is guaranteed to win. But like I've been saying, none of this can happen without the right economic conditions. Because what most people aren't talking about is that this gambling epidemic isn't random. It's a direct response to economic desperation. When people can't afford the big things in life, they start making small bets on happiness instead. And this pattern of behavior is actually an economic indicator that predicts when everything is about to collapse. In fact, there's even a theory for all of this. In the aftermath of 2001, the chairman of Estee Lauder, the beauty empire that owns brands like Le Labo and Clinique, noticed something strange. Lipstick sales were surging despite a slumping economy. And he noticed it again after the 2008 financial crash. Lipstick sales spiked, and during the inflation of 2022, the same thing happened. He called it the lipstick index. That when times get tough, people swap big purchases for small luxuries. And it wasn't just lipstick, but fancy chocolates, $10 lattes, and artisanal candles. All these sales surged when a house, car, or vacation became unaffordable. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. These little treats that make you feel better become a guilt-free bet on happiness. And if we're gonna get all technical, it serves as this economic escapism to cope with the fact that the bigger goals in life has become impossible. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, but on steroids, with blind boxes, social casinos, and gamified shopping. But it's not just women. Men too are doing this, but just a little differently. Right now, Google searches for how to day trade are at all-time highs. And just how unemployment numbers serve as recession predictors, so does unconventional spikes in amateur day trading. Historically, we also saw this in 2021 during the AMC short squeeze frenzy, and when paychecks started becoming uncertain, people started chasing fast money and upside to make up that difference in income. And when regular people lose hope in steady jobs and find overconfident hope in easy trading apps, recession typically followed within the next 6 to 12 months. And with online gambling becoming more legal and available, this desperation is showing up in the fact that 1 in 2 American men today have a gambling account. So when traditional paths to prosperity like home ownership, stable careers, building wealth feels more like the lottery than a certainty, both men and women don't just stop seeking rewards. They just downsize their bets in different ways when the big wins in life seem impossible. And these companies are smart because they're hooking you in an endless dopamine loop where your economic anxiety continues to get monetized. But the more dangerous aspect about this is that it's not just changing how we spend money, it's starting to change reality itself. Because when everything becomes a bet, the line between prediction and manipulation starts disappearing. And that's where everything truly gets scary. And believe it or not, we just saw this threshold get crossed this year. Just over a month ago, something kept happening in the middle of WNBA games. No, it wasn't people deciding to sleep during the game. Let's just say that people were throwing certain objects on the court.
And you can see the object, the block right there. The object comes, that green thing bounces and it goes to the sideline.
And after a few of these incidents started happening, platforms like Polymarket that allow people to bet on real life events started posting a market for people to predict which day the next object will be thrown. So think about what that means. Like this guy says, prediction markets aren't just predicting outcomes anymore. They're encouraging people to interfere and create future outcomes. We're literally at a stage where platforms and bettors profit from disrupting future events because it drives engagement and betting volume. And so even if you don't shop on Shein or place bets on draft picks, you and I included are increasingly engaging in this overall gambling economy. One where companies profit from creating addictive spending behavior like gamblers feeding coins into a machine that's ultimately rigged against them. So the choice is yours, really. I mean, it's your money, but next time you're about to make that purchase to treat yourself, really ask yourself, am I buying something I need, or am I buying a temporary fix for my economic anxiety? Could that money be invested in something that could actually change your situation, or are you just feeding the machine that keeps you exactly where you are? Because in an economy where everything is a bet, just like gambling, the house always wins. So maybe the only winning move left is recognizing, what game do I really want to play? Is if you're the special 2,400 of you who already are learning how money and power works, I'll be going even deeper into this issue next week on my free newsletter in the video description. But if you want to watch the first part of this series on this gambling epidemic, go and watch this next video on how online gambling broke America.